In 2021, Google ripped up its own playbook in so many ways with the Pixel 6. It delivered a striking new look with completely new software and even teased and showed off the phone months in advance to get ahead of the leakers. With the Pixel 7 in 2022, the name of the game is refinement of what it launched in 2021, but with the same approach to marketing. We've known what the Pixel 7 would look like for months, but what we didn't know was how it would build on the processor platform of last year, and if it could deliver a significantly better experience. I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and this is our review of the Google Pixel 7. And if you do like it, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. With the Pixel 6, Google changed its design language for Pixel significantly, so it wasn't ever likely that things were going to change drastically again for the Pixel 7. Look at them from the front and you'll see the two are basically identical in terms of having that rectangular shaping with straight bezels and minimal rounding in the corners. Plus, there's that now instantly recognizable camera bar across the back of the phone. But here is where the biggest visual change has occurred, because instead of having a glossy glass panel running along that bar, Google has opted for a solid aluminium bar, giving it a much more seamless look and cutting out a pill-shaped area for the two cameras. The two-tone color scheme has gone too, and on this white model it's a very clean overall look, and one that we think is just a tad tidier and more refined. That's also reflected in the slimmed down size. It's shorter, narrower, thinner and lighter than its predecessor, making it seem a tiny bit less chunky in the hand and the bezels seeming less prominent around the display. I really like the solid and slightly more compact feel of the phone. It just feels a little bit less hefty. It feels well made, and the IP68 rating will ensure that dust and water will find it very difficult to get inside the phone. Now, the joy of using the Pixel 7 is the same as what made the Pixel 6 such a pleasure to use. It's just so fluid and effortless, swiping around the user interface with its big friendly icons, its clean look and whimsical but useful widgets that were updated as part of Android 12's major revamp. Most of that has remained unchanged on a surface level with Android 13 on the Pixel 7. One new addition is the ability to use facial recognition for unlocking the phone. Like many other Android phones, this is purely camera based though, and so doesn't have the added security that comes with having depth sensors. That means you can't use it for things like authenticating payments or unlocking your banking apps. It's a shame, but not entirely unexpected. As a display, the 6.3-inch AMOLED screen on the Pixel 7 is an enjoyable panel to watch movies and game on. It's vibrant, and with peak brightnesses up to 1400 nits and 1000 nits typical, it's really bright. It doesn't have the Quad HD resolution of its Pro sibling, but in our experience that's not something you miss all that often. It's also 90Hz refresh rate rather than 120Hz, so it's just that slight step down from the Pro model. Despite that, it's a great screen for pretty much anything. Color saturation is high without pushing too far and over-egging reds and oranges. Likewise, the contrast is impactful without crushing the image. With the 90Hz refresh, you get nice, smooth animations too. It's smooth enough that everything gets that fluid and responsive feel, at least in the parts of the interface that are optimized for it. Some games and videos still don't go above 60Hz, obviously, so for most things you'll use the screen for, it's more than good enough to match the necessary refresh rates. Another benefit of the regular Pixel 7 is that the display is completely flat. That makes it tremendously practical for typing on, and also means that the screen doesn't curve around the edges and cause any sort of distortion to the image that you're viewing. It's just an all-round good display. On the processor front, at least when it comes to raw power, not a lot has changed from the Pixel 6. It uses the second generation Google Tensor processor, which is very similar to the first generation processor, and it's paired with 8GB of RAM. Digging into the specs and the capabilities, it's clear, as with the last model, that this processor wasn't built to be an all-powerful, all-conquering chipset. It's more about working smart than working hard, delivering intelligent capabilities that make the phone more useful. That's not to say it can't handle your favorite games, it absolutely can, delivering a smooth and reliable experience regardless of what game title we threw at it, whether we played casual titles like Monument Valley or faster moving titles like Mario Kart Tour or Call of Duty. The experience was pain-free. Sure, it might not push the boundaries of frame rates and performance, but it's more than good enough for pretty much everyone. One thing we did notice, at least compared to the Pixel 6 that we've been using before this, was the lack of heat. Last year's model seemed to get warmed down one side with virtually any task if done for long enough, whether that was gaming or using the camera, but with the Pixel 6 it wasn't anywhere near as noticeable. The battery capacity and charging speeds aren't setting any records either, but again, thanks to some smarts, they deliver a great experience all round. With it having a lower resolution display than the 7 Pro, we didn't feel like the lower capacity 4355 mAh battery negatively impacted the running time all that much. Even on busier days with lots of camera testing and gaming, we didn't struggle to get to the end of the day at all. Having removed it from the charger around 7:30 in the morning, the phone still had a minimum of 30% left over by evening with a mixture of use. Even on days where we listened to music for 5 or 6 hours with wireless headphones and a connected Pixel Watch, it still did really well. Part of this is down to Google's adaptive battery tech, which is built into Android 13. It learns your use and optimizes its power usage to ensure it's not wasting energy on things that you don't typically use all that often. And with its 30-watt power delivery charging capability, you can refill the battery relatively quickly too. Not as quick as the likes of Oppo and Xiaomi and OnePlus, but it's quick enough that it's not a hassle. Most days we'd find ourselves plugging it in at night and then letting it refill, knowing that the optimized charging feature would ensure it wasn't sitting at 100% for hours. Instead, it tops up that first 80% and then finishes the rest in time for your morning alarm. And that's on by default whether you use a wired charger or a wireless charger. Now, we've seen a number of different smartphone makers over the last couple of years build phones with lots of camera lenses, but with many of those being virtually pointless. So for Google, that's not really an option. Instead, there are two functional, useful lenses, and like the rest of its phone, they're designed to show off the best Google has in computational abilities. And it's in the camera department that Google really does show these off. What it means for the end user is that it doesn't really matter what conditions you're trying to shoot photographs in, you'll get great results. All you have to do is point and shoot, and it'll use Google's algorithms to process the image and create a great looking sharp image with lots of color and contrast. What we like is that while definitely color rich, the saturation doesn't veer too much into the realm of hyper-real like some Android phones do. It's exciting without being over the top, and you get a natural sense of depth when you shoot close-ups. It's in the processing and the brains behind the image that we see the most change from the previous generation, because lens and sensor hardware is essentially the same. You get a 50 megapixel main camera and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide, but the Tensor G2 processor has an enhanced image processing element delivering some pretty great results. In low light, particularly using night mode, we notice the speed at which it captures and then processes the image is faster than on the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6a, which are both powered by the first generation Tensor. What's more, if you get it to night mode, mount it to a tripod and find a clear patch of sky away from urban lighting, you'll be able to take photos of the stars, again, automatically. It'll just detect that it's no longer handheld, that it's steady, and start capturing light and detail. After about 5 minutes, you'll have a picture of a starry sky. Where the Pixel 7 differs from its more expensive sibling, the Pixel 7 Pro, is that it doesn't have the dedicated zoom lens. But that doesn't mean you can't zoom. Thanks to some clever sensor cropping, you can zoom 2 times and still get good, sharp results, and even push all the way to 8 times if you want, but at the extreme end, the images do start to look a bit mushy. As for the selfie camera, that is, as always, great. Year on year, Pixel phones seem to make it really easy to take great selfies with good detail and contrast, with a really effective portrait mode that adds background blur just using the front-facing camera. And it's loaded with some other really useful and cool features as well. Just like the Pixel 6, you get motion capture options that automatically add motion blur to images of people moving quickly, and on the video side this year you also get a new cinematic mode that adds blur to the background when it detects a subject in the foreground. Like Apple's feature of a similar name, it works automatically, but you can also tap on the subject or the background to smoothly transition between the areas of focus. Plus you can even shoot at 10-bit HDR. Now, one of the more useful camera features is something built into the Photos app, and is another thing powered by Google's algorithmic prowess. It's called Photo Unblur. If you have any photos that come out looking soft, out of focus, or a bit blurry, you can tap the Photo Unblur option in Photos and it'll sharpen it for you. It's pretty neat. The overriding feeling of using the Pixel 7 is that not much has really changed from the previous generation. Yes, there are enhancements to some of the features and a slimming down of the body, and that does make a difference, but the essence of Pixel remains the same. It's like using a slightly better, more grown-up and refined version of the Pixel 6. That's no bad thing though. The Pixel 7 delivers a great everyday experience, and it's the effortlessness with which it handles the everyday that makes it such an enjoyable phone to use. Plus, it's not even that expensive. It's great value for money, and one that I really enjoyed using. Let me know what you think of the Pixel 7 this year in the comments down below. Will you be upgrading from an older Pixel? If you want to get me on Twitter, you can do. I'm at Cam Bunton. And if you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up. It helps us a great deal. Tap subscribe and the notification bell, and that way you don't miss any more of our uploads. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.